Pride and Prejudice, Chapter 1, second video. Well, I ended my last video with the following remark by the husband, right? By Mr. Bennet. And the remark was, in such cases, a woman has not often much beauty to think of. In such cases, a woman doesn't often have much beauty to think of. And of course, the idea here is he's offending his wife, right? He's saying that, look, you are too you're too beautiful, and I don't want you to go there, visit the new neighbor, because, I don't know, you are more beautiful than your daughters, you know. And then she says, when a woman has 5 grown-up daughters, she ought to give up thinking of her own beauty. And then he says, look, if you have 5 daughters, if a person has 5 grown-up daughters, so most of the time there's no beauty to think of. And then she just continues. I mean, the wife, right, we don't know if she didn't understand what he said, or she's so used to that she chose to ignore him, but she continues as if nothing happened, right? But my dear, you must indeed go and see Mr. Bingley when he comes into the neighborhood. It is more than I engage for, I assure you. But consider your daughters. Only think what an establishment it would be for one of them. Sir William and Lady Lucas are determined to go merely on that account, for in general, you know, they visit no newcomers. Indeed, you must go, for it will be impossible for us to visit him if you do not. Keep in mind that a very nice technique when you are reading literature is to keep asking yourself questions, right? Don't feel you have some questions. Explicit your questions. The more explicit your questions are, the deeper you will go into the book, okay? And the clearer, of course, will be your understanding of it. You know, nowadays people talk a lot about reading a lot of pages, you know, a day. I think my courses on literature are the opposite of that. I want to teach people to read less pages in a day. For example, I saw in one of the channels, a small digression, one of the literature channels, people reading this book here, called Montanha Mágica in Portuguese. I'm reading this book in my Portuguese channel. And then there was this lady in her channel saying that people should try to read 50 pages a book. 50 pages a day, you know. And look, I have to be honest with you, I think 50 pages a day, a Montanha Mágica, I say the name in Portuguese because I'm reading the book in Portuguese, okay? Instead of Magic Mountain. The name of the book in English is Magic Mountain. So, I think it's an assassination, you know, it's a sacrilege to read the Montanha Mágica 50 pages a day. So keep in mind, my effort in my videos will always try to make people read the books more slowly. Of course, when the books deserve it, okay? Some other books don't deserve to be read, in my opinion. And some other books are, you know, they're supposed to be read like in a flowing movement, you know? Just to give you another example, nowadays, I don't have it here, but nowadays I'm reading a popular British book called, I forgot the name of the book now. High Fidelity. High Fidelity. It's a very interesting book about relationship and etc. But you're not supposed to, you know, go deep in any of those parts. So I'm just reading page after page. You know, sometimes I'm waiting something and then I just turn the pages. So why am I telling you all this? Because still believe I'm learning how to read, and I still believe one of our jobs here is to learn how to read. And part of learning how to read is to know how to differentiate things that we must use a lot of energy and things that should be read, you know, in a flowing movement, and things that shouldn't be read at all, all right? So I think because of Jane Austen, because she's a great author, and because, of course, our intent here is to improve vocabulary and interpretation and English in general, so it's worth taking up the slow reading, okay? So we should ask ourselves questions, you know? Not only interpretation question, but we should try to guess what is going to happen. For example, now I have some questions to ask you. Are Sir William and Lady Lucas their competitors in relation to Mr. Bingley? Because Mr. Bingley can just have one wife, unfortunately. And those guys, Sir William and Lady Lucas, are going to visit him on that account. So are they, you know, the Bennet's family competitor, or they're going to help them, you know? Is Mr. Bennet offending his wife? I've already talked to you about that. Is she offended? I don't know if I answered completely that question. And then the other question, why not? Why isn't she offended? Or maybe you think she is offended, she just doesn't say it. What do you think? Okay. And then, of course, the next question is, why can't they visit Mr. Bingley if Mr. Bennet doesn't visit him? Okay? I would like you to pause the video and answer to yourself. Remember, in order for this thing to work, you have to try to answer aloud, you know? You can, remember, as we have set, you can record and send the audios to me. I think it will be a very nice exercise. But if you don't feel like it now, but answer aloud to yourself if you're not recording the audio. So I hope you have paused the video. And now let's answer the question. Keep in mind that it is indecent, right, for a girl to visit a man at that time without any kind of company, right? Even if you're talking about a bunch of girls, because we have a bunch of daughters here, right? We have 5 daughters and the mother. The first introduction has to be through a man, you know? Let's say the pater familias is the Roman term for that, you know, the man of the house, right? He should go there and give everybody permission to meet the guy. Continuing. You are over scrupulous, surely. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be very glad to see you, and I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my hearty consent to his marrying whichever he chooses of the girls, though I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie. Again, he's being ironic, right? To imagine you are meeting the guy for the first time and then you send a note there and say, look, I'm sending my wife and my daughters over to your house. If you want to marry if you want to marry any of them, maybe not my wife, please feel free to do so. It would be a pleasure. Of course, he's being ironic, right? Take a look. Though I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie. I desire you will do no such thing. Lizzie is not a bit better than the others, and I'm sure she is not half so handsome as Jane, nor half so good-humored as Lydia. But you are always giving her the preference. They have none of them much to recommend them, replied he. They are all silly and ignorant like other girls, but Lizzie has something more of quickness than her sisters. Keep in mind that this quality, quickness, is a quality apparently he prizes, you know? He thinks it's a very important quality to be quick. And then my question to you is, why does he prize this quality, in your opinion? Mr. Bennet, how can you abuse your own children in such a way? You take delight in vexing me. Vex here is to anger or annoy, okay? You take delight in vexing me. You have no compassion on my poor nerves. You mistake me, my dear. The husband answering. You mistake me, my dear. I have a high respect for your nerves. They are my old friends. I have heard you mention them with consideration these 20 years at least. Okay. Again, another irony of his part, right? Of course I know your nerves. Ah, you do not know what I suffer. But I hope you will get over it and live to see many young men of 4,000 a year come into the neighborhood. It will be no use to us if 20 such should come, since you will not visit them. Depend upon it, my dear, that when there are 20, I will visit them all. Mr. Bennet was so odd a mixture of quick parts, sarcastic humor, reserve, and caprice, that the experience of 23 years had been insufficient to make his wife understood his character. Well, first, let's say more superficial, simpler questions, right? First, what is this 20 and 3? Okay? This is an older way of counting, okay? It has virtually disappeared English completely now, but it still survives in some parts, and it's considered substandard English. If I'm not wrong, German counts like that, right? And if that's so, it makes a lot of sense because both English and German are Germanic languages, right? Okay, but let me open a parenthesis inside of this parenthesis. Don't you think it's a little strange that the more traditional one is the one people nowadays think it's wrong? You know, shouldn't it be like the opposite? The more traditional version is the version that people will respect more. In certain cases, yes, but not always. Mainly when you're talking about orality. Let me give you an example. In Portuguese, we have the word fruta, correct? I can tell you that originally, fruta was the standard Portuguese, right? It was wrong to say fruta, right? But with time, things changed. And nowadays people say fruta, and we think fruta is a kind of new creation, you know, ignorant people made because they can't speak the standard language. It's not. Fruta is the most traditional one. The same kind of phenomenon happened with 3 and 20 years instead of 23 years, okay? So keep in mind that they have been married for 23 years and the wife can't still completely understand her husband, right? Because he is a very odd, very strange mixture. A mixture of what? Quick parts, you know, like quick remarks, quick mind, sarcastic humor, reserve, right? He doesn't want contact with people, and caprice. Okay, to make his wife understand his character. Her mind was less difficult to develop. She was a woman of mean understanding. Mean here is not like, oh, you're so mean, you're so cruel. Mean understanding is like low, right? Low in rank. So she was a woman in mean understanding, little information, and uncertain temper. When she was discontented, she fancied herself nervous. fancy, of course, can be like a fancy car, but when you fancy something, you want something, okay? Or you can imagine something. In this case, is consider something. So when she was discontented, she thought she was nervous, so she couldn't even analyze her own feelings, you know? Like a child that starts crying a lot, and the child doesn't know that he wants to sleep, right? And he thinks the world is, I don't know, bad. When she was discontented, she fancied herself nervous. The business of her life was to get her daughters married. Its solace was visiting and news. That was, you know, something she used to console her in her life. Visiting and news, and of course we can understand news here as gossip.